Lamar Jackson back to throw, guns it into the end zone, intercepted. 2 yards deep in the end zone, intercepted by Taron Johnson, and he brings it out, and he's still on the run. He may go all the way. He's at the Baltimore 40, the 30, gets a block at the 20, 10, 5, touchdown! Touchdown! Taron Johnson goes 102 yards with an end zone interception. Touchdown, Buffalo!
Well, we got a great team, and they play with such skill. Buffalo Bills, Buffalo Bills. Yeah, the name of this team is the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo Bills, Buffalo Bills. They go for the kill. Buffalo Bills, Buffalo Bills, Buffalo Bills. Turn Indy round, shut them down, pound them in the ground, shut them down. Every time they get the ball, it's 1, 2, 3, kick, 1, 2, 3, punt.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another edition of Conor's Untitled podcast, Bumblin, Billshit, episode 2, where today we are kicking off the NFL season right, getting my predictions in and out of the way. Tonight, we are featuring our official kickoff to Week 1, where the Dallas Cowboys are traveling to Tampa Bay to take on the defending Super Bowl champion Buccaneers in what should be a shootout to really set the tone for the season. Thank you for listening. I really hope that you guys appreciate this episode and everything that I've done so far. If you have not already, feel free to go head over to my YouTube channel, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. You can check out previous episodes, including the most recent one, which was an interview with one Damian Simmons. So do yourself a favor, do me a favor, and go check that out. Now, without further ado, we're going to get into the episode today. So what I have in store for you today, like I mentioned, are my predictions. I'm going to go through each of the divisions, starting with the AFC and then the NFC. And I'm going to pick out who I believe is going to win each division, kind of give you a layout of how I think it's going to fall, 1 through 4. I'm not going to go over any records or anything like that. I'm not going to get super in-depth with it. But I am going to give you my playoff team predictions as well. So hopefully I can look back at this come February and, hopefully I'm right. So without further ado, we're going to start this thing off nice and easy. Started at home, as you folks know and can tell by the intro. I'm a big Buffalo Bills fan, so we're going to start right at home with the AFC East. And I feel like this one, for most people, is kind of an easy pick, that the Bills are slated to win the AFC East. Right now, it seems that they are the most complete team put together from top to bottom as far as their roster, offense, defense, and special teams. They brought back just about every single starter except for their punter from last season, so that continuity is still in place. Josh Allen's trajectory is still going upwards. Sean McDermott has shown that he is a very capable young head coach in the scheme of things. And that defense is always going to be solid as long as he's behind it. Another year with Brian Daboll at the helm on offensive coordinator. And as I mentioned, all the pieces coming back together, a lot of new pieces that are in there, mostly on the defensive side of the ball. But the Bills are looking to make a serious run this year, and I've talked about it in previous episodes, and I always talk about it. But I mean, this is a Super Bowl caliber team, and they were just shy, made it all the way to the AFC Championship last year, and just got beaten down by the Chiefs, unfortunately, which I take a little pride in, that the Chiefs seem to save their entire season. They saved their best game of football for the Buffalo Bills. So thank you, Andy Reid, Pat Mahomes, and the Kansas City organization. I'm very honored that you thought we were a bigger threat than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who fucking stomped you in the Super Bowl. But that's besides the point. Like I said, Buffalo Bills, I think, are going to win the AFC East. Be probably the best, if not second best record in the AFC. And I'm obviously rooting for them to go to the Super Bowl. A lot of people coming out of last season were picking the Dolphins as a very high caliber team. I mean, that defense they have is phenomenal. It can definitely, they get after the ball. I mean, I think they led the league in takeaways last season, or they finished top 3. But that defense is a hell of a unit. The offense, they added some playmakers. They added some studs. Will Fuller at receiver. Obviously, Devontae Parker comes back. My biggest gripe is that I just don't trust Tua. And to me, it seems like the organization doesn't trust Tua. You hear all the rumors that they're still going after Deshaun Watson. Obviously, last season, they kind of used Fitzpatrick as the closer to come into situations when Tua was struggling to close out and win those games. And I mean, to their credit, they won 10 games last year and very well should have made the playoffs. This year, I think if that defense is as good as they were last year, if not better, they can definitely make some noise and make their way into the playoffs. But as far as the division lays out, I've got them finishing third. And that means that I've got the New England Patriots finishing second, and then the Jets finishing in last. Now, before I get to the Patriots, the Jets, I always rag on them. I always rag on the organization. I always rag on their fans. And, it's a fun rivalry to me, and I poke fun at Jets fans. I do think the Jets are going to be a better team this year. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team. I don't think they're going to break 500. I think they'll probably win 5-6 games. But Zach Wilson, to me, looks like a guy. If that organization can, really pull their heads out of their asses and build around him properly, if Bob Saleh can coach, obviously we know he's great on the defensive end. He really did a number with that 49ers defense over the past few seasons. But if he can bring all the pieces together, they have some studs on the offensive line, especially the left side, with Mekhi Becton and Elijah Vera Tucker, who they drafted this year. They should be really good on that offensive line. And, Zach Wilson, he's undersized to me. He is small, but, I mean, he's got athleticism. He can throw the ball. So I'm not saying the Jets are going to be a team to worry about this year. Maybe not for a couple years, but they, to me, have a guy at quarterback, and everything else around it is question marks. So to me, I see the Jets finishing fourth, but they'll be better than they were last year. The Patriots, obviously one of the big focal points of the offseason and going into this season. Obviously last year they had Cam Newton at quarterback. He got COVID, the whole thing. And now they've drafted Mac Jones, who has since won the starting job from Cam Newton. And he just plays the same kind of football that they've known for the past 20 years when Tom Brady was on the team. Just very smart, efficient football, nothing too flashy, no big plays. You don't have to put the game in the quarterback's hands too much. And that's, right in Bill Belichick's wheelhouse. He's always going to have that defense going. He's one of those coaches that, as long as his schemes are in place and he has healthy personnel, he's going to have a solid defense. So, Stephon Gilmore being out for the first few weeks of the season does make me feel a little better. But I think that he's on the downswing of his career. So even though he still is a very high quality cornerback, he's definitely not what he used to be in my mind. And then as far as the offense goes, the big story is Bill Belichick spent a whole bunch of money in off season to bring in a bunch of free agents, Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry at tight end. Nelson Aguilar, I believe, is on there now. So, there's a lot of pressure on this team because Bill's never missed the playoffs 2 years in a row. And last year, obviously, they missed it on an off year with COVID. So I'm definitely going to take Bill's experience as a head coach and, being in rougher situations than I will with Brian Flores. I also think that, again, the defense may not be as good as the Miami's defense as far as talent and, star power, but I think it will be very efficient. And I really do believe that if Mac Jones doesn't suck entirely, which, all signs point to him not sucking, they could very well sneak into the playoffs, and we'll get into that. So for me, 1 through 4 on the AFC East: Buffalo Bills, New England Patriots, Miami Dolphins, and then New York Jets. Moving on to one that I think is another easy division to pick, and this is the Super Bowl runner-ups, the Kansas City Chiefs and the AFC West. I think everybody in their right mind is going to go ahead and pick Kansas City to win that division, and until Patrick Mahomes and or Andy Reid leave, that's going to be the case for some time. So they're very dominant. They are without a doubt, Buffalo's biggest rival outside of the division right now, because both teams are just, they met each other last year in the AFC Championship. Both quarterbacks are very similar to each other and in the way that they play with their arm strength and their athleticism. And they're very young, so I don't want to make this comparison and have people tear me apart for it, but we were spoiled growing up with like a Manning and Brady rivalry type deal. There was with Buffalo, there was the Kelly and Marino. Elway was thrown in there. Aikman. You have those big name quarterbacks that are kind of like those fun rivalries. And I really believe that we're seeing that new wave here now. Manning and Brady, obviously, Mount Rushmore quarterbacks. They're top of the mountain for almost everybody. Throw them up there with like Joe Montana and whatnot. Obviously, we're hoping, for me as a Bills fan and other Bills fans, we're hoping that Josh Allen can find his way to that point at some point. But this is the new generation of quarterbacks. You have these studs that are really making names for themselves. Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. Baker Mayfield looks like he has potential and can pan out. And we're just coming off of another great generation: Big Ben, Phillip Rivers, Drew Brees. Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers is a nice in between there. But anyway, Pat Mahomes, as long as he's there, to me, that team is gonna continue to win that division. But they're definitely gonna have a run for their money with the Los Angeles Chargers in my mind. And Justin Herbert looks to be another guy that's going to fit right into that category of just big, strong, good arm, athletic quarterbacks that can make plays and throw the ball all over the field wherever the hell they want. That team has been loaded for years, and it just seems like they've never really gotten the right coach in place, the right play caller in place, whatever it is. It always just seems like injuries, something is wrong with the Chargers. So this year, I am going to take a gamble and say that they're going to finish second because their offense is loaded. Like I mentioned, Justin Herbert is a stud. Keenan Allen is probably the most underrated wide receiver in the game. I consistently give him props year in and year out, and all he does is produce. So Keenan Allen needs some love from people. He is an absolute stud. Austin Eckler has really come into his own in the past couple seasons and shown that he can be a great ball carrier. Mike Williams is also a really good receiver. So that team is really loaded. On the defensive end, they've always been really good up front, especially with Joey Bosa. So I don't know if it's much of a hot take or not, because there is some other good teams in that division, but I think the Chargers would be a clear-cut number 2 for me if everything pans out. Now, they have a rookie head coach, which is always a wild card, but he was great as the Rams defensive coordinator. All the talk in the offseason seems like the guys really buy into him and like what he's doing. So, put me down for the Chargers at number 2 in the AFC West. Followed very closely, and I think it's going to be a battle for that number 2 spot with the Las Vegas Raiders. They have a lot to prove, primarily in my eyes. John Gruden. He comes in, makes a whole bunch of noise with the organization, ships out some really high quality players, Khalil Mack, Amari Cooper, that are shining in their new locations. And it hasn't really had much to prove for it. No playoff appearances. I don't think he's broken 500 yet as a coach, and has made some very questionable draft picks, whether that's on him, whether that's on Mike Mayock. A lot of people say that, with Gruden's contract and the power that he carries, that Gruden runs the organization, Mike Mayock just, signs the checks. So I think there's a lot of pressure on the organization. One person I don't think has pressure on them in that is Derek Carr. Derek Carr, much like Keenan Allen, is a guy who doesn't get respect in my mind for his position. Over the past 2 seasons, this guy has completed just about 70% of his passes, which is like amazing. That's Hall of Fame numbers. I'm not saying that Derek Carr is a Hall of Fame quarterback, but over 2 seasons worth of football, to be completing, over 60% of your passes is great, but to be completing about 70% of your passes is phenomenal. The guy just puts up numbers. He's a great leader from everything that the team speaks. So if the Chargers don't end up taking the second spot, I part of me is saying it's the Raiders because I'm rooting for them. I feel like, having some Raiders friends, they are really overdue for their time, I guess you could say. May or may not make the playoffs, but I think that's going to be a very competitive division outside of Kansas City. I think Kansas City is going to run away with the division lead. Those other three teams are going to be finishing for hopefully a wild card spot. Broncos, they're another one that's odd to me. I was kind of a Drew Lock believer going into last season, but he just didn't pan out. He rode his highs too high. Never really strung together very many wins. He's another guy. You could say a la like Zach Wilson, very small but athletic and a good arm talent. It just seems like, I don't know, maybe being a franchise quarterback for the Denver Broncos is not for Drew Lock, but you bring in a guy like Teddy Bridgewater, who, no disrespect to Teddy Bridgewater at all, but this guy's at this point in his career basically a journeyman, a bridge quarterback, and he beats out Drew Lock for the starting job. Now, whether that's legit and he actually earns it, which I'm not doubting. Obviously, Teddy's a seasoned veteran quarterback, or if it's just Vic Fangio, making a move to try and motivate Drew Lock. Who knows? I'm not sold on Vic Fangio as a head coach. I think if and when they don't have a good season this year, that he's going to be on his way out. That can go all the way up to John Elway if we really want to have that conversation. I don't know too much about Broncos football, but it just seems that Elway cannot land a quarterback unless he's bringing him in from another organization, and I feel like they were kind of fingers crossed on Aaron Rodgers leaving Green Bay, and then they were kind of like, well, let's just go with the guy who's efficient, and it stinks because they've got studs on that team. Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy are, up there as far as wide receiver combos, is just as far as talent. Now we'll see if production pans out, which is, dependent on quarterback play. But either way, AFC West, Chiefs run away with the lead. Give me the Chargers at number 2. Put the Raiders at a very, very close 3. You can swap those two in my mind. And then the Broncos, just based off of quarterback play, I'm going to have to put them in at 4. Now, what I believe is going to be the toughest division in the AFC to pick is the AFC North. And this one, to me, we could very well see 3 teams come out of the division and go to the playoffs. The one that I think is the easiest, and I think everybody can agree with this, is going to be the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, I do believe that Joe Burrow is a solid starting quarterback. I don't think that year at LSU was a fluke. I think that was maybe it's his peak, but if he can get close to that type of production, and he did seem to be more comfortable in his role as the season went along before his injury. It's just the rest. It kind of like with Zach Wilson. I just don't trust the organization. Zach Taylor, I think this is his 2nd or 3rd year as a head coach. So maybe he hasn't had enough time to implement his system. Obviously, this is Joe Burrow's 2nd year going in. The Cincinnati organization and the owners have been notorious for being cheap. They don't shell out money for big free agents. They don't even have an indoor practice facility. They have to do all of their practice outside, which, winters in Ohio are not great. Not as bad as these New York winters, but they're, you're right around the Lake Erie, so you're going to get some snow and some shitty weather. But either way, just because of the rest of the division, the other 3 teams that are in here, being so stacked and so solid, I think that you're going to have the Bengals finishing 4th. So that one's easy. I'm going to be and it surprises me that I'm going to be saying this, because if I said this even 4 years ago, let alone, multiple years ago, that would have been like, what are you talking about? You're absolutely crazy. But the Cleveland Browns are going to win the AFC North. And this team, outside of, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Kansas City Chiefs, even the Buffalo Bills, I would say, they are definitely within that realm of top 5, just best, most solid rosters, top to bottom. They brought in a few new pieces to kind of help them out. New tight end, new pass rush with Jadeveon Clowney. So they're just loaded. Odell Beckham's coming back. They had, a top 3 offensive line in all major categories last season. So you could argue that they are the best offensive line in football. To me, it's between them and the Indianapolis Colts, just because Quentin Nelson's a freak. But we'll get to that in a minute. But the Cleveland Browns are just absolutely stacked. And so I think it comes down to Baker Mayfield. That's really the biggest wild card to me on this team. Everywhere else is just loaded. Receivers, running backs, offensive line, stacked. Defensive front, Myles Garrett is, working himself up to be a future Hall of Famer. He is, you put the helmet and Mason Rudolph scandal aside, he has just been nothing but dominant since he's entered the league. So he is going to really help that defensive front. Their linebackers are solid. Their defensive backs are solid. They're just an all-around great team. Kevin Stefanski seems like the guy. He seems like he is the coach that's going to get everything moving and everybody doing their job properly. It's all going to come down to Baker. And I really think that this team is going to win the division. They're probably going to end up winning a playoff game in my mind. They did it last year, and they're going to be solid for a few years. I think Baker's going to get his extension probably mid-season. They'll probably go up. I'm really hoping that they win week 1 against Kansas City, obviously. Then we can shut up all that Kansas City's going undefeated talk. So I feel like a lot of people are rooting for Cleveland in week 1, including myself. But let's say they don't win that. But let's still say that they rattle off 3-4 wins after that. I haven't looked at their schedule. I don't know who they're playing. But, I could very well see them giving Baker his extension early on in the season. Number 2 is going to be the Baltimore Ravens, and I feel like they'll probably only have 1 or 2 less wins than the Browns. And I feel like the J.K. Dobbins injury is a bigger deal than some people are making out of it, because he really, really started to pop at the end of the season and going into the postseason. And he was, getting an entire proper offseason, again, because he was drafted last year during the COVID offseason where, not a lot of guys got together. So he's got a full, proper offseason as the RB1 in this system, getting all those reps, getting all that knowledge, and, really seemed to shine. And then, obviously, he hurts himself in the preseason. Ravens fans are not happy about that, even though they've gone, 20 straight preseason. They haven't lost a preseason game in, 5 years or something like that, which is just absolutely insane. A wonderful, pointless stat, but still, nonetheless, really cool. But now that falls on Gus Edwards. Shout out Gus Edwards. I just drafted him in my fantasy league, him and Lamar. So I'm really hoping that the Ravens do well. I tell my buddy who's a Ravens fan, I root for you guys all the time up until you play Buffalo. And since we're not on the official schedule this year together, I was like, I hope I meet you in the playoffs like we did last year, and it plays out just like that clip you heard at the beginning of this episode. But the Ravens, as long as Lamar Jackson's going to be there and as long as Harbaugh is their coach, and Greg Roman really needs to diversify his offensive playbook. That was kind of an issue when he was in Buffalo running with Tyrod Taylor. But I think that if he diversifies his playbook just a little bit more, they've got some more studs on the offensive side with receivers. Another year with Marquise Brown. Sammy Watkins is there. They drafted a guy. So I think the Ravens will be good. I just think that the Browns have just a much better roster. They're just such more coherent, much more solid unit, that they're going to win the division. But the Ravens, to me, will probably be the highest wild card seed. They'll probably be a seed number 5. And then that would leave the Pittsburgh Steelers at the number 3. And I feel like they'll be battling for a lower spotted wild card. And, Mike Tomlin's never had a losing season. He's never gone under 500. So, at the very least, obviously I see them winning 9 games. But depending on how the rest of the AFC conference plays out, they may or may not make the playoffs. We'll see once I make my quick predictions here at the end. Now moving on to the AFC South. This is one that I feel like is a little more top heavy than some of the others. At the bottom, I've been saying otherwise than the statement I'm about to say when speaking to my friends and colleagues and other people that I just discussed the NFL with, as you do this time of year. And I've reevaluated, and I believe that the Houston Texans are going to be the worst team in football this year. Unless some miraculous reason Deshaun Watson plays or their new head coach is a stud, I think they are going to be the worst team in football this year, probably no more than like 3 to 4 wins. Brand new head coach, all that controversy with Deshaun Watson in the offseason. You've got all the discussions about the front office and this Jack Easterby guy that's running the day-to-days, but doesn't seem to know what he's doing. I'm not fully up to date on the Houston Texans story, other than that Deshaun Watson has like 20 plus allegations against him, which, obviously if any of those hits, it's disgusting, and we hope that justice is served as it should be. And everybody's like, oh, there's no way that there's, that the 20 plus cases are all going to be true. No, I don't believe that all 20 plus cases are actual, but you can't, dispute all of that until at least one of those could be very true, and that's all you need. It's not a matter of, one out of these 20 something is true. How bad could it really be? It doesn't matter. Whether you do it to one person, whether you do it to 20 people, if one is enough. So if it's true, it's despicable. If it's not, we'll let everything play out how it does. But besides all that, I just don't think that they have the personnel. I love Tyrod Taylor. Obviously, I respect what he did for the Buffalo Bills organization during his time. But he's just got the worst luck as a starting quarterback. He backed up Joe Flacco all those years in Baltimore, became a starter in Buffalo, then lost his job. Then he became the starter in Cleveland, and then lost his job. And then he became the starter in Los Angeles with the Chargers, and then he lost his job. So who knows? Maybe, I believe they did draft a rookie quarterback this year. Maybe he ends up doing the same thing. I'm hoping Tyrod has a good season. I really do like the guy. But the team as a whole, their defense is just lackluster. They lost J.J. Watt. Their offense is not really anything to write home about. They've got Brandon Cooks and Mark Ingram, who I think are probably on the downswing of their careers, unfortunately. But they've got potential. They're decent players, but overall, I don't think that team is going to do very well. And very close is going to be the Jags. I think the Jags will maybe have one or two more wins than the Texans will. I do think that they'll win in week 1 against the Texans. Trevor Lawrence, I mean, I'm sure people are sick of hearing about him. I'm sick about hearing about him and talking about him, but he is the real deal. I mean, everything I've seen from his Clemson tape, the preseason tape, I mean, it really seems like he's going to be good. So for that team, that really just comes down to lack of talent. They just don't have a whole bunch of stud players. They don't have quality offensive line play. And then Urban Meyer, as great as he was in college, the NFL is a completely different beast. So it all comes down to him, his play calling, his play style, all that stuff. So number 2 in the division, and I think this might be a hot take, but I'm going to roll with it. I think the Tennessee Titans are going to be the runner-ups, and I believe that the Indianapolis Colts are going to win the AFC South. And you guys are going to be like, what the fuck are you talking about right now? Yeah, I said it. I think the Indianapolis Colts are going to shock some people, and I think that they are going to win the AFC South, despite the Tennessee Titans adding some studs like Julio Jones onto their team, and then having other guys, A.J. Brown and Derrick Henry. I just think that they're kind of an inconsistent team. They'll look really hot one week and really cold some other weeks. Vrabel, as much as he is a defensive-minded coach, that defense can be really, really hit or miss from what I've seen. And they're losing. They lost Clowney. They lost Malcolm Butler. And they've still got some decent talent over there, but their offense, I believe, will absolutely be better than the Indianapolis Colts. But as we've seen in championship football, especially this past Super Bowl, defense really makes a difference, and that Colts defense is very good. As far as schemes go, they're very smart. They fly around the field and they all swarm to the ball. Darius Leonard is an absolute beast. He just got an extension this offseason. And then, as I mentioned, on the offensive side, Quentin Nelson is without a doubt the best guard in football. Coming off of what was supposed to be a major surgery ended up being a minor surgery. But he'll be back along with the new quarterback, Carson Wentz, who gets a lot of shade. I am here to stake my claim. I am on the Wentz wagon this season. God, if he gets hurt, I'm going to look like an idiot. I feel like injury is going to be the only thing that can bar his season. He reunites with Frank Reich. He's got better offensive line than he had in Philly. He's even though T.Y. Hilton is going to be out for some time, he's got some very good players on that team, especially in the run game with Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines. So I really believe that, injuries aside, Carson Wentz is going to have a very excellent season. I don't know if he's going to be an MVP caliber player, but I think he's going to have a great season. He's going to do just enough to get that team into the spot where they need to be to win the division. So, hot take or not, I'm on the Colts wagon. I'm riding the Wentz wagon, and we're going with that. So as far as AFC recapping things before we take a quick break, division winners, I've got the Buffalo Bills winning the East. I've got the Browns winning the North. I have the Colts winning the South, and I have the Chiefs winning the West. As far as playoff teams, I'm definitely going to be picking the Ravens. I'll definitely be picking the Titans. And that third spot, it really can be a toss-up. I think the AFC is the more dominant the more dominant conference. But that seventh spot, you can really kind of pick the New England Patriots, the Pittsburgh Steelers, like I mentioned, the LA Chargers. If I had to have a safe pick, I'd probably say the Steelers. Just because the Patriots having a rookie quarterback, and with the Dolphins, again, me not trusting Tua, and then the Chargers having a rookie head coach, and they've always been one of those teams that just has bad luck. So I would probably say that the Steelers would be my third wild card. So Buffalo Bills, Cleveland Browns, Indianapolis Colts, Kansas City Chiefs for your winners. Baltimore Ravens, Pittsburgh Steelers, and Tennessee Titans for your wild cards. That's my prediction. I'm sticking to it. We'll be right back with the NFC after this short break.
Good protection. Allen fires a strike. Gabriel Davis. 31-yard score.
You know who the beast in the AFC East. We gon' grind this thing out for 17 weeks, yeah. You hating on the Bills, then you way off. Talk is cheap, meet us in the playoffs. Game day, you know we going off. Got your team captain shaking at the coin toss. We say mafia, that means family to me. Cause we stand with the team, best fans in the league.
Bills Mafia, Bills Mafia, we the Mafia, Bills Mafia, Bills Mafia, we the Mafia, Bills Mafia, Bills Mafia, we the Mafia, Bills Mafia, we the Mafia.
Conditioning before what a Bills debut. As he draws the football loose, gets it back to Josh Allen. dropping a dime, and Diggs with a stroke of genius.
There is nobody else in the middle of the field. Watch this route. Turns him around, and then Josh Allen skins it down the field for a huge play.
A huge play. Welcome back to Conor's Untitled podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Get used to hearing that. Josh Allen's going to sling the ball all over the world this year. So, as we have been doing throughout this episode, we are going division by division by division by division and taking a look at each of the winners, my prediction as to how they're going to play out, and the playoff teams moving forward. So, not getting too much into records, but we're going to see if we can predict how things will play out with the season kicking off tonight. Figured might as well start with the defending Super Bowl champions in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And so we will go with the NFC South. Now, in previous years, this has been a difficult division to decide on and figure out what teams are going to end up winning, coming out as wild cards, so on and so forth. Now I feel like it's a little bit more top heavy. I feel like the Bucs are going to run away with the division. I don't believe they're going to go undefeated because that's very, very difficult to do in today's NFL. But never say never. Either way, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Tom Brady, Bruce Arians, returning everybody on both sides of the balls, both players and personnel. They're going to absolutely stampede through that division. Excuse me. Now, in previous years, as I mentioned, you had some high level competitors with the Saints. Drew Brees being gone, obviously there's some issues with Michael Thomas on whether or not he's coming back to play after his injury. And outside of Michael Thomas, that's kind of a depleted offense. Emmanuel Sanders has signed with Buffalo, and then obviously they still have Alvin Kamara, but you're kind of thin on the offensive side of the ball. So Jameis Winston is taking over the starting role. Taysom Hill is probably going to resume his position as the gadget player, taking some snaps as quarterback, but QB1 is going to be Jameis Winston. And then the Falcons and the Panthers. I mean, that division's always been kind of competitive. Now, I believe that the Buccaneers are going to be at the top, and then it's kind of just a pick and choose for 2, 3, and 4. I'd probably say if I had to pick one team that's going to come in second, it might be the Falcons. That offense is absolutely loaded, even though they lost Julio Jones. They added Kyle Pitts in the draft, who's going to be a world-class tight end. And then Calvin Ridley has shown that he can be an absolute stud in this league. New head coach in town. Obviously, there's always some learning curves and some bumps along the way with that. But he's an offensive-minded coach. And Matt Ryan's still there. Matt Ryan still plays high-quality football. They've got a decent offensive line. And, I mean, the biggest question is just in their defense. For years, whether it's injuries or just bad play calling, their defense has always kind of given up their game. So if their defense can be just slightly above average, I think that team can definitely finish second. But I don't believe any of these teams besides the Buccaneers are coming out into the playoffs. But I'd probably put the Falcons at 2. The Saints, as I mentioned, losing Drew Brees is huge, and I think we're really going to notice that. Now, if Jameis can play his upside before he took his year off when he was playing with the Buccaneers, did his 30 and 30 year. If he can keep, 30 touchdowns, that's great production, but the 30 interceptions is really the detriment. So if he can cut that down even in half, the Saints are going to be formidable, and I could very well see them taking the number 2 spot. But with Michael Thomas being out and having question marks around him and not really much else to rely on the offensive side of the ball, I'm going to have to put them at 3rd. And that leaves the Carolina Panthers, at number 4. And while I do believe that this team is going to be much better, they just have a lot of question marks, a lot of new pieces that I'm kind of, not 100% sure on. So Matt Rule, second year, heavy offensive coach. Obviously the whole thing with the new owner a couple of years ago. Christian McCaffrey returns. You've got a new quarterback in Sam Darnold, who I think is going to be great. I really believe that getting out from not just the Jets organization, but Adam Gase as a just horrible head coach, we're really going to see that upside to Sam Darnold that a lot of people were talking about when he was coming out of the draft. So I really think that this team is going to pop, and even though I believe that it is top heavy where it's Bucks and kind of everybody else, I really feel that like any of these teams could take the number 2 spot in the division. Any of these teams could finish last. Like I could very easily see someone winning 9 games. At the same time, I can see that same team not winning any more than 4 or 5 games. So very weird division for me. But for the foreseeable future, it is Tampa Bay and Brady's division. So that one's kind of easy. We'll go to another easy one, which I think most people would agree, and that's the NFC North. Now that Aaron Rodgers is actually back and in the building and, 100% focused on football moving forward. And if you haven't seen, shout out Pat McAfee show every Tuesday with Aaron Rodgers. Definitely a great segment to watch and just kind of get inside the mind of one of the best quarterbacks to ever play this game and just kind of learn how he does things. So shout out to them. Shout out to him. Go do yourselves a favor and check that out. It's a really great segment. But to me, the Packers are far and away better than the rest of the teams in this division. But the rest of it is definitely a little bit more manageable than the NFC South. So Packers at number 1. I think that's going to be a clear-cut runaway favorite. Number 2 in recent years has been the Vikings. And they've been kind of spotty over recent years. Ever since Kirk Cousins took over, he's had some good moments and some bad moments. They've had some hit or misses on the defense, which used to be an absolute powerhouse underneath Zimmer. But with opt-outs last year, and obviously they're having big problems within the building with their vaccination status amongst players. There's a lot of noise coming out of Minnesota, and I really don't see them doing too well this year. Probably a 7-8 win team, but I would probably put them at 3. I would put the Bears at number 2. Despite rolling with Andy Dalton, I believe that Matt Nagy is a good coach. Not a great coach, but I think he's a good coach. Now, you got to think he took a subpar offense led by Mitch Trubisky to the playoffs 2 years. Now, he hasn't won any of those playoff games, but 3 years. I'd have to look that up. He has taken that team to the playoffs. So now it seems like their general manager made a bad promise, and they have to roll out week 1 with Andy Dalton. But they very well may do the Deshaun Watson, Tom Savage treatment where, if he stinks in the first half or, even just throws an interception within the first half, Justin Fields is coming off the bench and he's coming in there. And I think Justin Fields, as long as, again, the organization, the Bears, can build around him and do the right thing, that he can have a very, very formidable NFL future moving forward. A lot of people are going to hear this and think, the Bears can't get a quarterback right at all. The Bears haven't had a good quarterback since McMahon, and he wasn't even that great of a quarterback. Everybody knows that the 85 Bears defense won them that Super Bowl and not their offense, but I digress. The Bears, I believe, Matt Nagy at head coach, again, they still have a good, solid defense. Roquan Smith, Khalil Mack. I think they'll be a good number 2, depending on how the rest of the NFC plays out. I could very well see them grabbing a wild card spot. Vikings at 3, as I mentioned, and then the Detroit Lions. God bless the people of Detroit, because you guys are so fucking loyal and have been terrible literally forever. Arguably one of the worst, unluckiest franchises in the NFL. It's not even anything that you can, beat up on them or root against them. I do like their head coach, just as far as a guy, as a personality. Dan Campbell just seems like an absolute maniac of a guy, and maybe that's what Detroit needs coming off of terrible years under Matt Patricia. New quarterback in the room with Jared Goff. Just a whole bunch of changes all over. And I don't think that team is going to be very good this year, but it seems like they might be making, or at least have an idea on where they're going in the future. So that division to me is also a very easy one to pick. I'm going to save the most difficult division, probably the toughest division in the NFL, for last, and that's the NFC West. And then that brings me to probably the most popular division in the NFL. Definitely has some of the highest, popularized franchises in it, with the Cowboys, the Eagles, the Giants, and the Washington football team, formerly known as the Redskins. Which, just minor note, I really think that Washington Red Wolves, would be a really cool name. I saw that they put the Defenders out as one of their things, and unless the XFL team, the DC Defenders, is going to change their name, I think they should just roll with the Red Wolves. But anyway, this division, all eyes are on it at all times of the year because of the Dallas Cowboys. And Jerry Jones, being the media mogul that he is, and knowing how to work the media and the league and the news cycles and everything, has really put this team in a position to succeed. Obviously, they're kicking off the season tonight against the Buccaneers, and we're expecting a shootout between Dak and Brady and those high-powered offenses, which is exactly what the Cowboys have. If everything goes healthy, obviously they're currently missing Zach Martin due to COVID complications, but I mean, he's a hell of a guard. Probably number 2 behind Quentin Nelson in my opinion. But besides that, they have an absolutely stacked offense. Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, Ezekiel Elliott in the backfield. Dak's coming off of injury. Obviously, that's a huge question mark. But whether he's putting on a show or he's legit, he says he's ready to go. He's ready to move and get this thing rolling. And if you remember last season, before he went out with that injury, he was throwing the ball all around the world. I know I made that joke about Josh Allen just briefly ago, but he was literally on pace to throw for 6,000 yards. I picked him up in fantasy this year just on shits and giggles. I'm still very questionable about that ankle, and seeing how, obviously that team is very Dak dependent. But if he stays healthy, if that offense clicks, they are going to be a problem. The defense, going back to last year, arguably one of the worst defenses in the National Football League. It can only get better from here on out. They bring in Dan Quinn, formerly of the Atlanta Falcons, to head up the defense. They got rid of Mike Nolan. Fucking who knows why he was there in the first place, but either way, they bring him in, and they have some pieces. I mean, obviously DeMarcus Lawrence up front. They just drafted Micah Parsons. You've got Diggs' brother in the background, Trip. I can't even remember what his last name is, or his first name. I think it's Trevon. But either way, they have all these pieces. Now, saying all this, you're going to be thinking, oh, Conor's probably going to pick the Cowboys to win the NFC East. There were a lot of ifs and buts and maybes in that statement, and I still feel those about the Cowboys. Now, I think they're going to be a formidable team. I think that if everything goes together, they absolutely have a more talented team than the rest of this division. I just don't trust it. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just that weird gut feeling, and I could be totally wrong. They could come out tonight, punch the Buccaneers in the mouth. They could move on and, win 13, 14 games and go all the way to the NFC Championship. I mean, that's kind of the fun thing about this, is I'm going to put this out here in the beginning of the season and then evaluate towards the end of the season and be like, fuck, Conor was really fucking wrong there. But either way, I'm going to roll with the Washington football team again. I believe that they will have the best defense in the league. They arguably had it last year, and I've talked about really, really great defenses, and I'm going to talk about a couple more once I get into the NFC West. But Washington has their whole front is loaded with first-round draft picks. Their secondary is just a bunch of ball hawks. Their linebackers are just some of the freakiest dudes that have ever put on a set of pads. They fly around the field. They knock the ball out. They get takeaways. They keep things tight. They almost beat the Buccaneers. They almost beat the Super Bowl champions on a third-string quarterback or a fourth-string quarterback. That was their biggest detriment last year, was piss-poor quarterback play. Now, they bring in Ryan Fitzpatrick. Ryan Fitzpatrick, as we know, is the journeyman, the backup bridge quarterback. And from his time in Buffalo and everything that he's done. I'm a huge Ryan Fitzpatrick fan. He just seems like a big kid that's out there playing football and just having a great time. So I think bringing that level of consistency, that veteran mindset and leadership into the offense is really going to help people progress. They have a stud at receiver in Terry McLaurin, though he is a little smaller than some people would prefer. He's definitely very shifty and has great separation. Logan Thomas, former Buffalo Bill as well, seems to be coming into his own as a tight end. Obviously, last year he had his breakout season. They're hoping he can replicate that. And Antonio Gibson broke 1,000 yards without even playing all 16 games. I think he played like 11 or 12 games. So, again, for all of those guys, another full off season in the same system, being in the building without all there are COVID protocols and restrictions, but without as many as there were last year, I really think that this team can kind of gel together. Chase Young, again, on the defensive side, is just an absolute freak, and that was just as a rookie. So now, again, giving him a whole other year, I really think that team is going to have the best defense in football. Ron Rivera is a very smart, seasoned head coach, has been to a Super Bowl, did not win it, but he's been there. And I really think that they're gonna impress some people. Now, if Fitzpatrick goes down and they have to bring Heineke in, hopefully he can replicate what he did in the wild card, but we'll see. Cowboys would be a number 2 for me. I think those two teams are definitely going to have a huge slugfest for the rest of the year on that division. Giants, I would put at 3. I think much like other teams, that all comes down to their quarterback play. They've got a decent offensive line. Saquon Barkley comes back. You've got Sterling Shepard and Kenny Golladay, two very, solid receivers. Your defense has always been good, and I think Joe Judge is the guy. I don't follow the Giants very closely, but from what media people are telling me, and just hearing all the noise from the offseason and just seeing how he's really changed the Giants organization from McAdoo. I don't remember who the guy in between was, to now Joe Judge. I really think that he'll get the Giants where they need to be in a few years. But for now, I don't trust Danny Dimes. He just seems like one of the lower tier quarterbacks in the league right now. I think they could definitely do for an update there. And then just, more continuity, more time gelling together, because I think this is only Joe Judge's second year as a head coach. So I think they could be good. I think they could have a very good offense. But I don't know. I just don't. I'm not expecting much out of the New York Giants this year. And as I mentioned in the first segment, how I'm predicting that the Texans will be the worst team in the NFL, my pick up until recently was the Philadelphia Eagles, who I still believe will finish 4th. They have a new head coach, an undersized quarterback that they don't seem to be 100% behind, a shoddy offensive line. They're missing some offensive players. Their defense is a little meh. And then it's just the Eagles. It seems like they've fallen off horribly after their Super Bowl victory, which is, again, still crazy to think that the Eagles have won the Super Bowl within the past 4 or 5 years. So it's just wild to me that they've fallen off this hard. NFC East, give me the Washington football team to win it. Cowboys in a very close second, and then the Giants, and then the Eagles. Now, moving on to what is arguably the hardest division to pick, the toughest division in the NFL as far as talent and just team quality, is the NFC West. And I've struggled trying to pick out the winners for this. And I really believe that this is going to be the division that sends three teams to the playoffs. As for the last place team, I do believe that this is the weakest of the 4 teams, and that's the Arizona Cardinals. However, I do think that they may have the best offense out of all of these teams. It's just the other 3 are just so well-rounded or just have better quarterback play. So Cardinals with DeAndre Hopkins, Kyler Murray, A.J. Green, Chase Edmonds, and James Conor, just to name a few of their offensive players. I still can't believe they haven't brought Larry Fitz back, but that's a whole other thing. Cliff Kingsbury is kind of a mid-range head coach. He might be one of those guys that can, maybe get you to the playoffs, but would never get you any further. I feel like he'll, in my eyes, if this was like a video game or like a franchise or something like that, I would have everybody gel together under Cliff Kingsbury for a few years and try and see how things play out. And then you're just going to have to bring in some other guy that can just get all these pieces going, because that is a good, stacked team. Chandler Jones, J.J. Watt, over on the defensive side of the ball. It's just the team is so loaded, I just don't fully trust their head coach. And the other three teams, it's very difficult to pick between them. I am going to go with the Los Angeles Rams to win the division. I feel like Sean McVay is probably and it's so hard. I was going to say that he's probably the better coach in that division, but it's just so hard. Pete Carroll's won a Super Bowl. The other two, Shanahan and McVay, have been to a Super Bowl. Pete Carroll, obviously more well-rounded, a little bit more defensive-minded of a coach, where the other two younger guys are offensive-minded. It's so hard to pick this division. It's very difficult. I mean, you could literally – I feel like the big three, the Niners, the Seahawks, and the Rams, you could pick any one of those to win the division, and most people would be like, I could see that. Sean McVay, obviously very bright young head coach, got a new quarterback to him, Matt Stafford, who is either on the tail end of his prime or just outside of his prime. Still got a lot of good football left in him that's unfortunately just been buried up in the Motor City. Aaron Donald, the best defensive player in the league today and probably of the past 10, 15 years, just an absolute animal up front. Then Jalen Ramsey on the back end. And as much shit as I like to talk about Jalen Ramsey, because he likes to talk shit about Josh Allen, he is a very good cornerback. And there's no taking that away from him. So their defense is going to be solid. Losing Brandon Staley to their rivals across the hall in the Chargers is going to be a little difficult, but I'm sure they're a team that can bounce together. McVay moving all the pieces around and getting people in place, I think he'll have that team moving. I really do believe that team, despite the fact that they lost to the Jets last year, which was just wild, I really think that Matt Stafford having that veteran mindset, having just that more natural talent than Jared Goff had, is really going to put this team over the hump. And then it's so hard to pick 2 and 3. I mean, you could say the Niners, they had all those injuries from last season that really, brought the team down. And Shanahan is, again, a very smart, young, offensive-minded head coach that seems to get the better of Sean McVay. And they've got studs all over the place. Obviously, Trey Lance is their new quarterback that people are just kind of salivating and waiting for to come in. But Jimmy G, don't forget, brought them to the Super Bowl, was one bad pass away from possibly winning that Super Bowl. People are going to kill him for that, but I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo is a bad quarterback. I think he's just had a bad string of luck. But that's the NFL for you. And then the Seahawks, Russell Wilson, arguably a top 5 quarterback in the league, arguably a Hall of Fame level quarterback if you really want to get into that conversation. DK Metcalf, basically the second coming of Julio Jones, as people have put it. Tyler Lockett, you've got great running backs in the backfield. The defense is always going to be on fire. Bobby Wagner leading the way over there. Jamal Adams. I mean, that whole division is just loaded with just solid defense play, really smart head coaches, very well-rounded or very athletic and smart quarterbacks. It's without a doubt, in my mind, the best division in football right now, just on a talent standpoint, personnel, coaching, everything. And so it's very hard for me to pick the winner. Like I said, I'll go with the Rams as the division winner, but the Niners and the Seahawks are making the playoffs. So with the added division winners of the Buccaneers from the South, the Packers from the North, and the football team, Washington football team in the East, that's 6 of your 7 playoff spots. And then it gets kind of tricky. I mean, the Cowboys could absolutely make the playoffs. the Bears, if Matt Nagy doesn't have, some of his bumbling moments during the season, or if Justin Fields does come in and start to light things up, the Bears could very well take over. If the Falcons, if their defense plays slightly above average and their offense is just as electric as you would assume it to be, the Panthers, if their offense clicks, they've got a lot of studs over there too. So it's really, really, really tough to pick the NFC. Even though I said that the AFC, I believe, is the better conference, it's just got better teams, obviously really stud young quarterbacks all over the place. I do believe that the AFC just has more depth of talent across the conference than the NFC. But either way, just to give you my final predictions on the NFC, I mentioned the division winners, the Bucs for the South, the Packers for the North, the Washington football team for the East, and the Los Angeles Rams for the West. Out of the West, for the first two wildcard spots, you'll get the San Francisco 49ers and the Seattle Seahawks. And then I'm going to put my foot down, and I'm going to say that the Dallas Cowboys are going to make a wildcard spot, and they are going to go to the playoffs this year. I am by no means a Cowboys fan or a supporter. I love to root against the Cowboys, and poke fun and jabs at my buddies who are Cowboys fans. But I will tell you, I am rooting for them tonight. I hope that they come out and smack the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the mouth. And I really hope you guys do, get on the way to that wild card spot, because once you're into the playoffs, it's a whole new season. It's anybody's game. So. Once again, folks, I want to thank you for spending this past hour or so with me. I want to give a shout out to Benny the Butcher for providing us that slight interlude music. Obviously, I have not spoken to him, but it's a really good song that obviously fits the theme of the episode. So Benny the Butcher with the Buffalo Bills Mafia anthem. I'm sorry. You can find that on all of your audio listening devices. Just to wrap things up as we move forward, I hope everybody enjoys the game tonight. Everybody enjoys the games this weekend. We will be back in probably about a week or so with some more football episodes and some other content. But if you guys have anything that you want to reach out to me about, hit me up on my Facebook, hit me up on my YouTube. If you have my phone number, wonderful, get a hold of me. If not, well, then you don't have my phone number. But just as a final recap, again, so for our AFC, we have the Buffalo Bills winning the AFC East, the Cleveland Browns winning the AFC North, the Indianapolis Colts winning the AFC South, and the Kansas City Chiefs winning the AFC West. Our three playoff teams would be the Baltimore Ravens. Three wildcard teams would be the Baltimore Ravens, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Tennessee Titans. So basically a rehash of last year, just things moving around a little differently. As for the NFC, to go over it one final time, the Washington Football wins the NFC East, the Green Bay Packers win the NFC North, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers win the NFC South, and the Los Angeles Rams win the NFC West. Coming out of the NFC West for your two wildcard teams, Seattle Seahawks and San Francisco 49ers. And the final one rounding out is the quote-unquote America's team, Dallas Cowboys, for the wildcard spot. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for checking out Conor's Untitled podcast. We will see you the next time.
1, 2, 3.
Go Bills! Go Bills! Go Bills! Go Bills!